Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 Better Buildings, Better Plants Summit, a virtual leadership symposium. Thank you all for being with us today for our session on Easy as ABC, how advanced building construction creates efficient, affordable, and appealing solutions for low-carbon buildings. We have a wonderful session prepared and some fantastic speakers I'm going to introduce in just a moment. Next slide, please. Before we dive in, we have a few housekeeping points I would like to cover. Please note today's session will be recorded and archived on the Better Building Solution Center. We will follow up when today's recording and slides are made available. Next, all attendees are in listen-only mode, meaning that your microphones are muted. If you experience any audio or visual issues anytime throughout today's session, please send a message in your chat window located at the bottom of your Zoom panel. Next slide. My name is Adam Hawes, and I will be your moderator for this session on advanced building construction, or as we call it, ABC. I'm a technology manager at the Department of Energy's Building Technologies Office, and I've worked on the Advanced Building Construction Initiative at DOE for the past 3 years. I'm excited to share insights from my colleagues working directly with the ABC approaches to construction and renovation during today's session. Next slide. After concluding this introduction, I'll provide a quick overview of the ABC initiative and collaborative work happening through DOE. Then we'll listen to 3 dynamic speakers and have a facilitated discussion about their work. Finally, you, the audience participants, will have a chance to ask your questions directly to our expert panelists. Next slide. During today's session, we will be using an interactive platform called Slido for our Q&A as well as for some polling. Please go to slido.com now using either your mobile device or by opening a new window in your internet browser. Today's event code is #DOE. Once you enter #DOE, please select today's session title in the drop-down menu, which again is Easy as ABC, how advanced building construction creates efficient, affordable, and appealing solutions for low-carbon buildings. If you would like to ask our panelists any questions, please submit them anytime throughout the session on Slido. I will then select and ask your questions near the end of the session. We are about to launch a poll to collect some feedback from you on your specific sector. If you haven't already, please go to slido.com, enter event code #DOE, and select Easy as ABC as your session. Now, for the poll, what sector are you from? Please, again, go to slido.com, enter #DOE, and select Easy as ABC. You can see that we've already got some results coming in. We've got some folks from government, from state and local. We've got some nonprofit sector participants. We've got multifamily housing, industrial manufacturing. We've got a bunch of people from other. I'm curious about which specific types of buildings or which types of organizations that represents. Again, we've got a pretty good mix here. If you have not yet, please go to slido.com, #DOE, and select Easy as ABC as your session, and let us know which sector you're from. Right now, other is leading the pack, but now we've got government, state and local, again in the lead, with good representation from the nonprofit, multifamily, industrial manufacturing, and higher education sessions as well. If you haven't yet, you will still have the chance to enter that poll throughout the session. But we're going to move on to the next part of our presentation. So thank you, everybody, for participating there. Again, you can go to slido.com, #DOE, and enter Easy as ABC at any point during the session to answer that poll, as well as to ask questions to our panelists. Now, what is advanced building construction? Over the past few years, the DOE Advanced Building Construction Initiative has worked with our partners to define what solutions fall under the category of advanced building construction. And we came up with this list. ABC refers to new construction and retrofit solutions that offer superior energy efficiency and low carbon performance. 2, are cost effective for developers and consumers. 3, provide faster and less disruptive on-site deployment as compared to traditional construction and renovation techniques. 4, are appealing to owners and users with added value, which can include improved indoor air quality, better comfort, improved resilience, reduced maintenance costs, or other added value sources. And finally, 5th, these solutions are compatible with new business models that enable market transformation in the construction industry. This specifically can include vertical integration, but it can also include a lot of other models to scale up the productivity of the construction sector. Next slide. Now, for advanced building construction, a lot of the solutions we talk about have some relationship to prefabrication or offsite construction. However, what really ties together ABC is that they can have innovation and improvements across the entire value chain for construction. There are ABC solutions that range from design to materials to components to manufacturing and finally to the installation of the delivered solution. And through the innovation across these 5 stages of the supply chain, advanced building construction technologies can improve construction sector productivity and help the most difficult building types to reach carbon neutrality. So that's really what ABC is about. And I'm very excited to hear from our panelists today that are demonstrating what ABC solutions can look like in the real world. So next slide. So today's panelists include Christina McPike from WinnCompanies, Tim Kohut from the National Community Renaissance, and Lucas Toffoli from RMI. We're now going to go into each speaker's sessions. So first, I want to introduce Christina McPike from WinnCompanies. Christina is the Director of Energy and Sustainability at WinnCompanies, which is a 50-year-old multifamily housing owner, developer, and manager. Since she joined Winn's Energy and Sustainability team in 2013, Ms. McPike has managed over $30 million worth of energy efficiency upgrades across Winn's portfolio. Under Ms. McPike's leadership, Winn Development successfully integrates high-performance design in every project, from occupied moderate rehabs to historic adaptive reuse projects to ground-up new construction. Ms. McPike leads Winn's DOE Advanced Building Construction team, seeking new and innovative ways to develop, scale, and finance deep energy retrofits. Thank you for being with us, Christina. Looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Adam. I've got to say, I'm not used to being called Miss McPike, but I'm really happy to be here. Like Adam said, my name is Christina McPike. I'm the Director of Energy and Sustainability at WinnCompanies. Winn is a 50-year-old family-founded and operated affordable housing owner, developer, and property manager. Sustainability is not new at Winn. Our in-house energy division, Open Market ESCO, was established more than a decade ago and has since facilitated more than $30 million in energy efficiency projects. We've developed nearly 3 megawatts of solar PV, and we've integrated green building standards across our development pipeline, including rehabs, new construction, and historic adaptive reuse. And despite all of this experience and success, there's still a major disconnect in the industry about how to decarbonize existing buildings. While we've seen enormous progress in recent years with new construction closing the gap between aggressive stretch codes and net zero or FIAS certification levels of performance, as an industry, we've only touched a small percentage of existing buildings and with marginal impacts on carbon emissions. We know as a large portfolio owner that we need to be at the table solving this problem. Next slide, Izzy. So what do we do about existing buildings? I'll just sort of clicked ahead, but that's okay. So what do we do about existing buildings? To start, I'm going to point out an obvious fact that multifamily housing is incredibly diverse. That's why my job is so much fun. Across Winn's portfolio alone, we manage our own low-rise townhouses, rentals, condos, mid-rise buildings, high-rise towers, buildings constructed in the 1800s, and mixed-use campuses. They're new and old. They serve families, other elderly households, formerly homeless veterans. I think you can imagine that this is an obvious statement, but there will be no one-size-fits-all solution for decarbonizing these buildings. And not only do we have to consider different physical components, like the images here, whether it's brick and block or concrete or stick-built, these properties also present operational nuances behind the skin. Take the property in the upper left corner. It's master metered, market rate, expensive utilities outside of Boston, and a failing facade, an ideal deep energy retrofit candidate right there. Bottom left, these are townhomes in Connecticut. Every resident pays their own utilities with individual in-unit gas heating and hot water systems. But how do owners and landlords justify the cost of a retrofit there? The site in the bottom right is also master metered. It's heated with electric strip heat to boot with through-wall AC units located outside of Rochester. Like my first example, this one would think, myself included, would be a home run and make for a great retrofit project. But it's served by a muni electric provider and pays about 5 cents a kilowatt hour for hydropower. That project won't happen based on energy cost savings alone. Okay, so we clearly have physical and operational nuances to overcome. There are also disconnects socially and in terms of policy. The reality is most existing building renovations are following level 1 code minimum compliance requirements and will continue to do so without accelerated market transformation through all the work that we're talking about today: technology development, social change, strong policy, and new financial solutions. Next slide. Because WIN's portfolio consists mostly of affordable housing, I quickly want to speak to how those projects are typically financed. LMI, or low and moderate income housing, is primarily funded through housing subsidy programs, including the low income housing tax credit program. The LIHTC, along with HUD subsidies, really drive high quality affordable housing today. These types of properties are renovated in accordance with various state-driven requirements. Typically, they're often administered and defined in what's called a qualified allocation plan. Every state we operate in differs, but for the most part, existing buildings are expected to follow a course of action that I think all of us are familiar with. Let's do an energy audit, commit to some level of energy savings if you can, and implement upgrades that are practical to do and aligned with capital needs. That's what we as owners and developers are asked to do. It's what we're incentivized to do. And that is the normal business as usual process for integrating energy efficiency into affordable housing. And it's also not enough. These challenges that I've probably been harping on for too long now, I'm looking at the time, bring me to the part where I get to reframe challenges as opportunities. And despite maybe my daunting preamble here, I'm extremely optimistic and excited to be collaborating with incredible partners and leaders in our industry to transition from what I would call the business as usual to a new advanced building construction normal. And the time to do so is now. So next slide. WIN was selected by DOE to lead an ABC project focused on transforming affordable housing through deep energy retrofits. We're working through an integrated, performance-driven design process to develop a financeable retrofit solution consistent with the Rocky Mountain Institute's Realize initiative for a demonstration project in Boston. The project seeks to identify technical, constructible, and financeable solutions to developing deep energy retrofits that can be scaled and replicated at the portfolio level. So easy as ABC. Our project is focused on Eva White Apartments, which is located in Boston. Eva White's owned by the Boston Housing Authority today and will undergo a RAD conversion, effectively privatizing and preserving the community while unlocking capital. The project's seeking LIHTC financing and planning a comprehensive renovation: kitchens, bathrooms, common areas, windows, roofs, boilers, the business as usual approach. We think by leveraging that approach and the long-term financing that it unlocks is critical for integrating high-performance goals and ABC techniques. So upon being selected for DOE ABC funding, we began fully vetting design strategies to reduce energy use by more than 50% in the building. Two primary goals have driven the design process to date. Firstly, we want to utilize a prefab unitized insulated panel that can be installed quickly and simply, reducing on-site labor and costs while also improving thermal performance. And secondly, we want to avoid tenant disruptions as much as possible, implementing the deep energy retrofit with residents in place, particularly challenging in the last year and a half. While we're still in schematic design phase and really just pushing now into construction documents, Eva White's initial cost estimate is about $3 million. We're projecting a modeled savings of 65% reduction in site energy use and $34,000 in energy cost savings. Next slide. To date, we've worked through schematic designs and pricing. I'm just showing a little sort of clip here, but we're advancing from the schematic design to construction level documents, like I mentioned, and excited to be doing so. As we refine and optimize our conceptual design goals, we've been able to get into much greater detail in design development, which means the hard work is really just starting. So after working closely with different panel solutions and manufacturers, we've selected Tremco's DER panel with an integrated UPVC window. We're working through specific panel details now, including corner connections, attachment flexibility, construction tolerances, parapet and soffit connection details, ductwork integration, window flashing details, just to name a few. Beyond the envelope, full electrification of building systems is also a project goal. The building is currently heated with the gas boiler plant, gas hot water heaters, window AC units in each apartment provide cooling today. Our project includes new central equipment, including a VRF, air to water heat pump for domestic hot water, and central ERVs for ventilation. In order to avoid tenant disruption as much as possible and due to serious space constraints inside the apartments, including very low ceilings in small apartments, we're actually reusing some of the existing distribution, including the exhaust ductwork. New MEP distribution is going to be installed outside of the existing facade within the new cavity that we'll be creating between the existing and the new skin. Nothing like this has been done yet in Massachusetts, and we are early on now in conversations with Boston's Inspectional Services Department, among other city agencies, to ensure that we're considering and integrating replicable code interpretations that we think will be important for scaling such projects. As I mentioned previously, initial pricing is coming in around $60,000 per apartment, which is not insignificant. We know costs need to be compressed, but also expect that early demonstration projects such as Eva White will come at a premium. We plan to progress Eva White's construction documents through the second half of this year, and fingers crossed, start construction in early 2022, pending financing. So stay tuned for more project updates there. Next slide. To ensure more projects like Eva White become the norm, we're working closely at the state and federal levels, evaluating utility incentive programs and thinking through ways in which we can better value non-energy benefits, including the social cost of carbon, which is just one of many. In addition to incentives, the LIHTC program that I mentioned before will continue to be critical for supporting affordable housing redevelopment efforts. As such, we're emphasizing the creation of a new deep energy basis adjustment for LIHTC projects pursuing super low carbon standards. Creating a new basis adjustment will help generate additional capital for affordable housing projects seeking deeper savings. And I'm confident, I know that similar creative and impactful funding and valuation efforts will be needed to support market transformation beyond affordable housing. Let's bring the luxury condo developers to the table. So as we work through and learn from Eva White, we're already thinking bigger and more broadly. Demonstration projects need to become normal projects. It won't be easy, but thanks to initiatives like ABC, I think we can make better buildings the best buildings over the next decade. And I'm excited to, I think, pass the baton back to Adam for more presentations. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christina. I always enjoy talking with you about creative financing with LIHTC. I think the basis adjustment to include deep energy retrofits is a really interesting idea, and hopefully it's something that we will be able to win and explore together. Next up, I want to turn to Tim Kohut from National Community Renaissance, or National Core. Tim is an AIA accredited architect and is Director of Sustainable Design with National Community Renaissance, a national developer or builder of affordable housing. Tim works with design teams, construction teams, and subcontractors to understand and implement strategies aimed at high performance and energy efficiency, with a current focus on decarbonization. He is a certified energy analyst, CEA, a home energy rating system, HERS, rater, and a Building Performance Institute, BPI, certified energy analyst. Tim has spent more than 20 years designing, building, and consulting on affordable housing projects throughout Southern California, and he's been involved in the design and construction of more than 2,000 units of high-performance multifamily housing. Tim, over to you.
Thanks, Adam. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, thanks. All right, really quickly, I'll give you a little bit of background of who National Core is, and then talk about a case study project that we're working on right now with the support of a lot of very talented collaborators, including RMI. The project is Corona del Rey, one of the projects in our 90+ project portfolio here in Southern California. Next slide, please. So National Community Renaissance, we is a developer builder of affordable housing. We are the 4th largest in the United States. I think we are the 2nd largest in California. Next slide. We develop, we're out there looking for new deals, looking for opportunities to acquire, possibly expiring use affordable housing. We have a general contracting team in-house who I work for. And then next slide. We manage and we provide supportive services. So we are all in when it comes to affordable housing. We never walk away from our projects. We are joined at the hip to everything that we do, with an increasing focus here in California on zero net energy and now decarbonization. Next slide. Couple real quick tidbits about National Corps' commitment to sustainability. We were named a power builder by the U.S. Green Building Council. The only affordable housing developer named to that. We've had it 2 years in a row, and it demonstrates USGBC's recognition of those who are going above and beyond just building LEED certified buildings. We sort of push the envelope with this process, new construction and existing buildings. We are also the first non-architectural entity to sign on to the AIA 2030 commitment, which commits us to zero net energy for all of our buildings, newly constructed anyway, by 2030. So we are closely tracking that, and we use that as a tool basically to push our design teams to higher standards. Next slide. Like Christina, we spend a lot of time looking at our existing portfolio. We benchmark everything. We are constantly staring at the data. This is a snapshot from WeGoWise, which we use on a daily basis to capture how our buildings are performing. And you can see on the left, we are spending somewhere in the area of $1.2 million a year on common area electricity, $700,000 in natural gas. Those are two real big targets for us when we're going through our portfolio and talking about energy retrofits. Next slide. So the new construction and even the low-income housing tax credit funding projects, when we do major rehabs, are really easy for us to deal with. But we were challenged by RMI and AEA, who came to us with a realized grant initiative funded partially through the state of California. And it's forced us to take another look at how we might approach a lot of our vintage buildings in our portfolio. Next slide. So this is brand new to us. And so I, as an architect and somebody who's done a substantial amount of rehab in my career, there is a business as usual approach to doing this, even when it comes to trying to make the old building new, trying to get insulation into cavities where it isn't, trying to update energy systems. Looking at prefab was something brand new and foreign to us, and something that we are still adapting to and trying to fully understand. So the opportunity came to us, and we had studied what had been done in other parts of the world, other parts of the country, and we decided that we would just take a plunge with one of our projects, Corona del Rey. Next slide. Welcome to Southern California. This is a project in Corona Inland, San Bernardino County, east of Los Angeles. This is a 40 building project, 160 units, all four plexes, 2 stories, and as you can see, a flare of probably 1990s vintage postmodernism kind of screaming at you. This is what I would call the Southern California dingbat, and we have a lot of this in our portfolio. Next slide. Originally rehabbed through low-income housing tax credits in the 1990s, way before anybody really cared anything about energy codes. National Corps acquired the project. It was distressed, economically disadvantaged community. And we did just enough rehab to make them habitable, but we were really constrained because there's asbestos in the exterior stucco, there's asbestos in the interior drywall, there's asbestos just about in everything that you would want to touch in this building, but we own it, we operate it. The asbestos kept the original team from putting insulation into any of the walls or the ceiling. So even though design heights are going to hit 102, 103 degrees out here, there's no insulation anywhere. Windows are single pane. So I listed a couple of the challenges there and a couple of opportunities, including our push to install rooftop solar. State of California is very aggressive right now in funding solar on multifamily affordable housing. That's the rebate program, SOMA. And we are leveraging about $20 million going through our entire existing portfolio to drop PV onto existing buildings to make them zero net energy. And Corona del Rey is one of those. You can see there's a lot of deferred maintenance, things like that when we start talking about panelized solutions might really be appealing to us, because the alternatives of ripping off stucco and restuccoing buildings gets very expensive. Next slide. So the two buildings that we're actually going to do as part of this grant are up in the northeast corner of the property. They're all identical, and then at the same time we're desperately trying to piece together the financing to do retrofits of the rest of the site. So the goal with these two projects is to do prefab insulated panels, prefab roofing panels, and then a prefab HVAC system, which I'll show you in just a bit. And the rest of the site, we're going to try to do what we normally do, which would be drill and fill insulation, patch the stucco. Probably don't have enough money to abate the asbestos, so we'll try to make do with the funding that we can find. Next slide. So when we look at the case studies on this, we look to Europe to see what's going on, and we realize that what works possibly in the Netherlands doesn't necessarily work in Southern California. So even though they might look similar in scale, they really are different animals. And ours is wood framed and stucco and it's pre-seismic, so there's seismic implications to what we do. And we've got to deal with these this aging and now deteriorating stucco and other portions of the building envelope. Not necessarily as easy as what we would do if we were in other areas like the Netherlands. Next slide. So the panels that we're landing on are going to be a little bit thinner, lighter, easier to attach to a wood framed building. But we hope are going to help us resolve some issues like, the lack of building paper, disintegrating building paper behind the existing stucco now, push the new weather envelope to the face of the building, introduce the insulation, the level of insulation that is not in the wall, and at the same time prefab the retrofit window insulation. So very lightweight compared to what you see on the right, which is the European model, which are structural panels and really are beefy. But their building stock can accommodate this much better than ours can in Southern California. Next slide. Designed to be handled by a couple guys on a couple ladders. The idea is it's very nimble system and lightweight and easily deployed and quickly deployed. Federalite does have under development larger panels that might be sort of craned into place, but still sort of adjusted by hand. This is what we have in mind for our project. Next slide. So this is the transition that we'll see. The existing buildings, we will do some demolition. We'll lose some of those postmodern features. We'll try to create a new vintage style, a little bit more grounded in the 21st century. We'll add the panels and the windows. We'll install the new roof, the panelized roof, and then the last thing is we're going to land a whole lot of rooftop PV on these buildings throughout the neighborhood. Next slide. One of the interesting things that we're looking at is because the buildings are uninsulated, the mechanical systems are way oversized. They're 2.5 or 3 times larger than they need to be because the HVAC systems have to make up for the lack of insulation. So we're looking at this prefab kit, which will be a high performance HVAC system. It has economizer ventilation tied to it. It has a lot of smart controls. This would sit in front of the building or on the patio and it would connect to a prefab duct system and an indoor air handler. This is another part of a different grant that we're hoping to use in the same project. Next slide. So, and this is what that HVAC pod would look like. So we're excited to see this kind of go in concert with the panelized system. And if everything is done correctly, if we can really pull this off and prove that this works, we've got a really great marketplace for doing this in the rest of our portfolio. And maybe some of our projects can start to really turn a corner and really give something back both aesthetically and performance. Next slide. And this is what we hope it looks like, in the end. This is what we're hoping to get to at the very end. It will be slightly out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. We still have to figure out how we're going to tie the aesthetic together with the other 38 buildings, but this is what we hope to see out of the realized grant. Next slide. One more shot of the front of the building. Thankfully, we've got talented architects involved. David Baker and Associates is really, really creative with the stuff. The challenges for us, low-income housing tax credits are really competitive. Hard to get those fundings. We are 0 for 3 the last 3 rounds. If you don't have local funding available, which the city does not have, it's really hard to get those funds. And so how do you cobble together your financing to make these things work? Trying to put together enough incentives and layering those incentives in a way that they work in concert at the same time. And then we struggle with things like split incentives. So if we can't recapture the investments in this because the benefits go to our residents and we're left with the gap without being able to recoup that, it's a real challenge. Next slide. And next slide. those are our partners. This is, there's a lot that we want to do going forward, and we're fortunate to have a team of collaborators, including AEA, RMI, David Baker and Associates, and there are a myriad of other collaborators behind the scenes working with us. Last slide. Back to you, Adam.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tim. I really appreciate all of your efforts on the project in Southern California. I think I've learned a lot from what you and RMI and all of the other partners have done in trying to translate the energy response model from the Netherlands to California, and realizing that there's a lot of things that don't quite translate, and then the ways that you've been innovative in trying to figure out how to make that work. So I look forward to the future progress of the project. Finally, we have Lucas Toffoli from RMI. Lucas is a manager in RMI's carbon-free buildings practice. He's the project lead for the Advanced Building Construction, or ABC, collaborative, launching with the support of DOE. Previously, Lucas has supported RMI's development of New York State's carbon neutral buildings roadmap with NBI and NYSERDA. Before joining RMI, Lucas worked for Cummings Properties, a vertically integrated design, build, manage real estate development company in the Boston area. There, he led sustainability and energy efficiency efforts across the firm's portfolio, in addition to performing various operational and construction management roles. Lucas, over to you.
Great, thanks so much, Adam. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great. So thanks again for the introduction, and thanks to the Better Buildings folks for having us all here today. I'm going to take a step back now and talk a little bit more conceptually. Christina and Tim are hard acts to follow with their great project details, and very thankful to have developers and portfolio owners like them at the table, as Christina put it. And I'm also honored to be on this panel together with them today. So I'm going to give a kind of a quick overview of the ABC Collaborative and what we're trying to accomplish with that. And then we'll have some time for discussion with all of us. So what is the ABC Collaborative? Well, what it kind of gets at is that the name of this panel today is Easy as ABC, and that's the vision, but we're not there yet. And so ABC is trying to enable the action and connect the stakeholders and build on the power of relationships to do what's needed so that we can mainstream ABC, so that we can get to that easy as ABC idea. So our mission is to enable the decarbonization of the US built environment by bringing together a range of stakeholders across the building sector. So construction, real estate development, and all of the adjacent industries and organizations to that sector. And to bring those actors together to drive the uptake and scaling, and again, mainstream adoption of what we call ABC, or Advanced Building Construction, which Adam introduced earlier today. And this is both for new construction as well as retrofit. So we are looking to synergistically address critical challenges that face the construction and real estate industries, and that requires systemic change, and systemic change requires collective action, has a greater chance of success with a wide input and participation from this universe of stakeholders, from the demand side, the developers, the owners, owner-operators, the supply side, which is the whole value chain, the research and development side that is providing innovation and innovation pipeline that goes into the market, and then the market enablers, who are all the various actors who help to kind of write the rules and write the checks for this building sector. And the ABC Collaborative is a market facilitation hub that touches all of these and helps to empower connections among them. So what we're going to help do is to help all of these stakeholders see that there is something to gain here for nearly everyone, and that's a good reason for everyone to get involved. With the challenges that the construction and real estate industries are facing right now, not doing anything is not really a real option. And so we're trying to help everyone do something constructively here. We'll also provide some guidance. We'll aim to accelerate sort of self-sustaining ABC marketplace, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. Next slide, please. So fundamentally, our goal for 2050 is shared among a lot of folks here, which is to help meet this need to decarbonize the built environment and also touch on issues of affordability and resilience while we do that, which are very big challenges for buildings right now. To get there, there's a few things that we think need to happen within the next 10 years or so. We think that the volume of net zero carbon retrofits needs to grow to somewhere on the order of a few million per year, and that all new construction starts also need to be zero carbon. We think that one of the ways to get there is to have this concept of ABC, which includes industrialized construction, make up at least a quarter of the construction activity in the US. And we also think that the idea of market transformation and new delivery models, and Christina and Tim touched on those a little bit, are going to be necessary to help unlock the market and streamline a wider volume of projects, really open the floodgates on those. So next slide, please. So how are we going to do that? It starts with collective action to help address major barriers. So that's kind of the bottom left of this pyramid. That's this idea of focused collaboration among stakeholders to really agree on what are the major challenges, what are the important intervention points, and agree to take collective action on those. You know, Christine asked the question of why is integrated or integrative design not happening? And part of the answer to that is to identify the challenges there through this idea of collective action among stakeholders. So one of the ways we do that, or we're starting to do that, is by organizing focused working groups among participants in the collaborative. And the idea there is to, again, identify the major barriers and agree to start to address those together. One of the barriers, for example, is the idea of code interpretation, which Christina also mentioned. And are there ways to create best practices there to educate code officials and things like that to streamline innovative ways of building, such as the retrofit project that Christina is working on. This will also help to bring together these disparate stakeholders who are sometimes competitors and provide a kind of neutral and pre-competitive environment for these folks to work together and eventually to build towards that ABC marketplace that I mentioned. On the bottom right, the idea here is to, informed by this kind of robust network of stakeholders, make sure that the pipeline of research and development and innovation is actually responsive to real world industry needs and is responsive to technical challenges and barriers where those exist, and then help create pathways so that the promising innovations that come out of the research and development side can actually have an impact on the market. So we're working closely with DOE on that, but there's also a lot of room for external innovation outside of kind of the DOE ecosystem. In the middle, part of what we're doing is a set of research and analysis work streams, including with the national labs, that will result in industry guidance to help answer the question, I want to implement ABC, but I don't know how to do that, and to help make that easier and again, build towards that easy as ABC tagline. Finally, as we see more demonstrations that the ABC Collaborative can help to organize and facilitate and work with folks at the vanguard, including, again, developers and owners who are coming to the table, there will be more experience and more confidence in ABC, sort of increasing familiarity with that. That'll also help to bring costs down, help to bring more capital into it, and eventually lead to a kind of self-sustaining marketplace that will early on get a nice push from us in the form of kind of tailored matchmaking and the support of transacting in the ABC space. So that's just a quick overview, and encourage you to ask more questions about that. Next slide, please. I think that's all from me. thanks very much, and go ahead and visit our website. Back to you, Adam.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lucas. It's been a real joy working with you and the broader ABC Collaborative team over the last year or so as we've actually built and launched the new institution. So now we're going to transition into a Q&A. So I'd ask the panelists to please turn on their cameras again. Thank you, Christina and Tim. And we will start with a couple questions I have prepared. Again, if you would like to ask questions, please go to slido.com, enter the hashtag DOE, and select the easiest ABC room to join the conversation. We've already got some great questions there. You still have time to contribute your questions. We're going to spend most of the rest of the session asking and answering those questions. So please go to slido.com and enter your questions. So to start with, I have a question that's pretty simple, but could be a broad range of answers. And it's for all of the panelists. How do you think, or what do you think, is the most exciting part of advanced building construction? What do you see as the most exciting part of the potential for how ABC solutions can change the construction market? And Christina, let's start with you.
I know, I think these are supposed to be softballs. I don't know which one to pick. I'm in general really excited these days, and by these days I mean maybe the last year or so. I'm just seeing leadership and innovation coming from every angle: federally, state, city, other owners, collaborators, you know, the working groups in the collaborative that Lucas talked about. I think this problem or challenge is bringing together people that aren't, you know, hypothesizing or talking theoreticals, right? Like we're doers, and we're kind of done talking about it, right? And we want to go and do it now. And so that's really exciting. And I'm not ignoring that there are barriers to actually go and do it. It's really difficult. Even experienced owners and developers like Tim and my colleagues at Win are facing barriers, but I'm very encouraged to see the doers coming together with a shared vision and initiative and appropriate leadership from, you know, various sectors, for-profit, nonprofit, really across the board. And I think that's kind of the magic sauce to really go and get the job done. That, and it helps to have, you know, climate change policy coming out of the White House. So happy about that too.
Yep, that last one has been a really, really great change for my work at DOE. Tim, let's go to you. What are you most excited about by the potential for ABC approaches?
I think the swiftness of how quickly things are happening is really exciting and sometimes difficult to manage. 5 years ago, conversations about electrification would just have resulted in people shaking their heads and saying, yeah, really good idea. We don't know how to get there. Need a whole lot of rooftop solar. And what we've seen here, at least in California where we are, is the advance of heat pump technologies for heating hot water, especially in multifamily building, have been a game changer. And when you tie that to rooftop solar, then it doesn't make economic sense not to electrify your buildings if you're looking at long-term economics. So when you tie all of this together, and now you go back to like these business as usual solutions that we're all talking about, we tend to fall back to the business as usual because it's comfortable, it's predictable, we know how to deal with it. Seeing how quickly the business as usual solutions can change. Like, we are excited about panelized, but right now it's not pricing. Like, when we get there, the guys who were there, the early adapters, we look at it and just like, yeah, we're so damn close. Why don't we just tear the building down and start over? And that's because the marketplace hasn't really been juiced enough yet to get more people into this and have other people do it. If we do it in a couple of projects, these grant opportunities I think are really terrific, because if you could start to tie all that together now, if you look at the cost of like renewables, even though they continue to drop and make the case for this, if you really start looking at the cost to retrofit, as RMI has been doing for years, the cost to retrofit building systems and energy envelope is much smaller than the renewable energy systems. The renewable energy systems are the easiest thing to do because you just strap them on the roof, you plug them into the grid, and you try to optimize everything else. Let's put it all together and start tying it to these prefab ideas and really trying to transition that sort of that part of the industry. That's what I'm most excited about, and I think we'll see a real tilt in this in the next 5 years.
That's great. Thank you, Tim. And I completely agree. The electrification shift, which has really taken off in the building sector, is very exciting. If we can pair that with some solutions like panelized envelope retrofits and on-site PV or even community solar, I think there's a huge potential to decarbonize our buildings very quickly. Lucas, let's finish up with you for this question. What are you most excited about for advanced building construction?
Thanks, Adam, and thanks, Christina and Tim. Great answers there. You know, Tim, I appreciate the plug on efficiency. You know, in my mind, and others have said this, efficiency is the original renewable. You know, what's more renewable than not using energy? And so I think as the grid becomes more electrified and as renewable generation becomes less expensive, we also have to not lose sight of the power of efficiency. To answer your question, Adam, I think what's most exciting to me, and I'll take this at a high level again, as I did with my presentation, is the idea of ABC being kind of applying the concept of integrative design. And that's really what RMI was founded on. Integrative design is the idea of addressing many different pieces together to end up with something that's greater than the sum of its parts, and having interventions, each of which provide multiple benefits. I think that there's a question here about, in the Slido, about social equity and racial justice. I think that's part and parcel of ABC necessarily, because we're addressing issues like you know, resilience, affordability, better options for marginalized communities. And from a kind of design perspective, you know, what we're trying to do here is come up with solutions that are effective for the buildings, effective technically, but also effective in driving a positive market transformation that is supportive of a vibrant domestic construction and manufacturing sector, that's supportive of innovation, and again, that's supportive of availability of, you know, affordable housing and of, you know, better buildings, or best buildings, as Christina put it. So that's what's really exciting to me, is all of these pieces coming together. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done, but that also means that there's opportunity for everyone to benefit from this and to be part of doing that work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lucas. So this was alluded to a little bit by Christina and Tim, but the next question involves big challenges to the ABC approach. And so it's again a question for everybody. What do you see as the biggest barriers to developing the ABC market or ABC solutions? And Christina, we'll start with you.
I mean, I hate to be kind of predictable here, but cost, and cost. And so it's expensive. The construction industry is building buildings the same way today that they did for the most part, you know, 100 years ago. And retrofitting existing buildings is has competing needs and priorities, right? So really marrying up, and I appreciate RMI's sort of approach and sort of philosophy around this sort of holistic planning, but somehow, you know, an affordable housing crisis and a climate change crisis are talking different languages and competing for resources. And those resources, when I say resources, I mean subsidies and money, aren't talking, you know, they're not talking the same language. And that's a big barrier that we have to overcome and figure out. I don't have the answer yet, but obviously more projects, more demonstration projects, more proof of concepts, more manufacturers in the space more technologies that work in cold climates and more technologies that work for low-rise and high-rise buildings and so forth. All of that is going to bring the cost down. We need significant workforce development. I can call 8 contractors in Massachusetts and maybe only one of them has time enough to even look at what I'm talking about. Whether or not they really understand what I'm talking about is another question altogether. So all of these kind of problems roll up into cost. If you don't have an adequate workforce, you're paying a premium. If you don't have the technology and you're trying to sort of fit a square peg in a round hole, you're going to pay more to do that. If you've got housing dollars trying to create affordable housing, which we need more today than ever, that doesn't really prioritize using that money for high efficiency improvements and outcomes, you're competing with those needs. So the sort of misalignment of priorities and I think missed opportunity or sort of undervalued outcomes is the barrier and the barrier that I think us owners and the sort of industry players need to be thinking about even more so than R&D and product solution development.
Thank you for that very thoughtful answer. And I know that we are working on a lot of those challenges that you named, some in partnership with your ABC award, but yes, there's a lot of different pieces to solve that relate to the high cost we're seeing now for actually implementing these solutions. So Jim, let's go to you. What do you see as the biggest challenges to implementing ABC solutions?
Well, yeah, Christina covered a lot of ground, and she alluded to, problems in workforce development and, technology and pricing. But, for me, I think that the biggest challenge is trying to negotiate the split incentive. Because what we own, and the slide that I had is we have $1.2 million worth of common area electricity spend. Doesn't talk about what our residents pay for electricity. So for me to go into Corona Del Rey and do this project, I've got to cobble together the subsidies to go in and help people, because I'm not allowed to touch, under current California regulations, I'm not allowed to touch the utility allowance published by the Housing Authority, which in Corona is somewhere in the area of $125 to $150 per unit. And strapping on a lot of insulation on the exterior of the envelope and onto the roof, and then throwing in a PV system will get their utility bills down to $10 a month, the metering fee. But the rent needs to be maintained so that the $750 unit also allows for $150 utility allowance. So we're only allowed to charge $600. So I can't tap into that. So there's no incentive for us financially. The economics drive everything that we do. And I can do Z&E, all electric, carbon neutral, new construction until the cows come home, because I can sell that and wire it in, and I can get the utility allowance down to $10 a month, which allows us to buy more stuff. I can't do that with existing buildings. And that is a real frustration, because in the midst of this, now you have this great divide. The people who are living in the newly constructed zero net energy houses who will have their energy costs fixed for 30 years. I mean, if you get to Z&E, they're going to be paying $10 a month. The sun's going to shine, and they're going to get a lot of benefit from that. But the people who are tied to these vintage projects, you can't go in and do the efficiency upgrades because there's not enough incentive to allow you to do that and reap a payback, because you can't adjust the utility allowances. That is the biggest obstacle. And I think everybody I talk to, whenever we're talking to something, I'm like, if you want to change one thing, let's change the regulations when it comes to zero net energy and the utility allowances. Allow us to adjust those and really reap the benefits of investing in those things that are going to help our residents and get their bills down to $10 a month.
Thanks, Tim. Really insightful answer. And I'll add that in the Netherlands, where we referenced the Energy Sprong program, they did exactly that. They were able to transform their regulations in order to include the payback of the installed technologies in the rental payment and make it a single rental payment rather than a separate rent and energy. And so that was how they were able to get around it and finance a lot of the upfront cost for the solutions. So I hope that we can all work together to figure out from our state and federal regulations how to encourage that type of creativity and allow for those benefits to go to residents of these buildings that could really use the upgrades. So Lucas, let's wrap up with you this question. What do you think are the biggest barriers to advancing ABC?
Thanks, Adam. I'm going to build on some things that both Christina and Tim said, which is this idea of excitement around these new solutions, around doing things differently, but a need to align, a need to take what are sometimes competing interests or competition for resources and try to reconcile those. To Tim's point, there's these competing interests of tenants and tenant rights organizations who may be resistant to a change in the utility allowance regulation because in the past, attempts to make changes to those kinds of ostensibly protective regulations have been a way to exploit vulnerable residents. But of course, what Tim is trying to do is completely the opposite of that. He's trying to save them money and give them greater certainty in utility costs, as well as creating better buildings, giving them better comfort, air quality, and that sort of thing. So bringing together, reconciling those points of view, that's just one example, I think is the kind of major challenge in my mind. There's room for different approaches, for trying different things, but at the end of the day, we need to be kind of rowing together overall, having unified ultimate goals. And the ABC Collaborative is trying to be a part of doing that, of aligning those goals, aligning those strategies, and putting stakeholders in the same room who maybe normally wouldn't be in the same room so that they can actually have those conversations. I think another challenge, which I don't have time to get into, but is the idea of value versus cost, and what does cost effectiveness mean? And are there ways to capture the additional value that ABC provides beyond just fewer dollars on your utility bill? I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but it's a complicated question that touches on a lot of different things.
Great. Thank you, Lucas, for that very thoughtful answer. So turning to some of the questions we got from the audience. Our first question, which looks like can be answered by all the panelists. How do you think state and local governments can best support the development of an ABC market and the ABC industry? So I'll let whoever wants to answer first answer.
I have a general response, and then I'll let Tim and Christina probably speak to their more specific experience. But one thing that we've heard a lot is, it takes a full-time job or more just to navigate all of the different opportunities between tax credits, utility incentives, and gap funding, whatever might be available in a particular jurisdiction. And so I think, again, coming back to the idea of alignment, having more clarity and more simplicity in those funding opportunities so that it's a bigger pool of dollars that can be more easily accessed for the projects that are really going to make a difference. To me, that would be a great point of intervention at the state and local level.
Thanks, Lucas. I think, Tim, you wanted to say something else, and then Christina, it sounds like you want to say something too.
I think the key is, whether it's, at federal level, I think they're talking about this. I've heard discussions about this, at Treasury level, like trying to come up with some pool of funding that could be fused into the marketplace to help with initiatives like this. If we're really going to cut our CO2 emissions by 50% before 2030, you've got to be able to unlock the funding for this. So at state level, it would be great if there were, it's a bond measure, or there are other funds available, because at least in California right now, there's such a scarcity to build new construction with the desperately needed new affordable housing. Not many people are thinking about how you go back and actually create a little bit of equity with the vintage buildings that are making up probably 95% of the affordable housing stock in most states. Unlocking that, and then, hey, we don't want this for free. We'll pay you back very low interest rates. We'll do more than residual receipts if we need to. But the end of the road for us is, we don't get our low-income housing tax credits. We don't compete. There's no local funding for it. And now we're just cobbling together what we can do to fix the plumbing, put in new kitchen cabinets, and paint the building. And then the families get to live in those buildings for the next 50 years. And I know on a 105-degree day that it's going to be 90 degrees when you sit next to the wall or the window because there wasn't any money to allow us to put in any insulation in the walls or improve the HVAC systems. And that is about equity. It's about job creation. And it's about really, if you want to hit these targets, it's all about unlocking more access to funding.
Thanks, Tim. And I'll note quickly that our secretary, as well as President Biden, has been championing money for affordable housing and energy upgrades as part of the proposed American Jobs Plan. And so folks want to look that up and contact your representatives or senators in support of that. That is certainly something that folks can do. So Christina, let's follow with you. What do you think states and local governments can do to help advance ABC?
Yeah, I think a focus on new resources, creative financing, like Tim was saying, is the key. It's and it can't really be existing housing subsidy. We can't overly rely on housing dollars. We need energy and carbon money, right, to do these kinds of projects. I don't think Tim was exaggerating. I mean, these projects are barely able to fix up a 40-year-old kitchen and bathroom and fix, a crack in a facade. So to ask owners to think about that type of renovation to a net zero renovation, I mean, it is like night and day. And without aligning and bringing resources together that are really going to pull the industry in that way, it's I think going to be stuck where it is. I will say there's power in policy. I can't sit here and advocate for unfunded mandates, but carbon, emissions ordinances and requirements in cities like Boston and New York City and DC and Philly and elsewhere, I think have the potential to, really move the needle. In states similarly, implementing, more stringent standards and mandates for reporting energy usage and actually doing something about it. Inevitably, that's going to push the market in one direction. We just cannot support mandates without resources to get them done, particularly for affordable housing with restricted or limited or no cash flow and limited replacement reserves and so forth. So there's really great ideas behind some smart policy, but we need to back it up with the financial resources to get it done.
Great, thanks, Christina. So a question that is related, but is a little bit more forward-looking. How do you see these projects eventually getting to the point where they don't need subsidies to be financially viable? What's the pathway through market development such that we could make this cost-effective, potentially even without subsidies? I know I've talked with Lucas quite a bit about this, and I know Christina and Tim have thought quite a bit about this as well, but anybody's welcome to answer.
Yeah, I'll jump in. What we see in California right now, where zero net energy is built into the energy codes, it goes back to AB 32 and state, goals to hit our carbon reduction policies. We've hit those goals and gone beyond it. And now it doesn't, as I said earlier, it doesn't make sense not to go Z&E if you're looking at the long-term cost of electricity. We hit grid parity, the cost at which point it's cheaper to buy the electricity from your roof than it does from the grid. We hit that about 3 years ago in California, and it's not California, interstate commerce, it works everywhere where the sun is shining. So when that happens and you see this transformation and it's driven by capitalism and the marketplace, when this starts to happen, you really see a shift. So what we need to see is, 10 years ago, rooftop solar was pricing probably at $4, $4.50 a watt. And now we just bought a project under $2 a watt. It's crazy. If we can get enough of this going on, if the federal government, if we can really build this into infrastructure and say affordable housing and existing housing stock as part of the infrastructure, if we can wire this in there and do the job creation that Christina alluded to, now you can really start to get this out in volume, get people competing against each other. And in 5 years, you could really see the cost driving down. And then why would I ever consider demolishing and replacing my stucco when I could do a facade retrofit with prefab? Why would I do a re-roof and drill and fill if I could do that? Now I've got an option other than what's available, which is a 10 to 15 year solution. And then I've got to think about another rehab. what if I can get to the 30-year solution and the price drives me in that direction? That's where I think this is going to change when we get more of this happening. But it's going to come from, if they really want to encourage innovation, they've got to subsidize innovation. And it's not just how are we going to pull carbon out of the atmosphere, it's also how are we going to do deep energy retrofits to keep the carbon from going into the atmosphere in the first place. And that's precisely what we're talking about here.
Great answer, Tim.
I can't add anything. I mean, that was a perfect answer. Yeah, I think I just want to keep reminding people, and the more that we can integrate health and equity into the conversation as additional values to doing these types of projects, and being able to afford and pay your energy bills every month, like that needs to be part of the conversation. Carbon is important, cost is important, but the social justice piece of improving the places where we spend all of our time, not just in COVID, but the buildings where we work and the buildings where we live, or maybe they're one and the same. It's sort of a human right question that we need to pull up to priority number one, down from where it is now.
Thanks, Christina.
Yeah, great answers, Tim and Christina. To Tim's point, I think something along the lines of doesn't need to be subsidized forever, but a robust feed-in tariff or that kind of an analog to that has been very successful in other industries. Most recently in solar. And Tim, I used to do solar, kind of small to mid commercial scale when I was back in the Boston area where the sun doesn't shine quite as much. And I can tell you that the last project that I did, which was a few years ago in that job, was less than the number, actually quite a little bit less than the number that you just said in terms of cost per watt. So those numbers for solar have come down so fast. I think there's the opportunity for something similar to happen with deep energy retrofits and also with some high performance new construction. And to Christina's point about capturing other value, health and equity, obviously it has tremendous additional value to the people who are experiencing it, but it also has additional value to other actors in the marketplace, to health insurance companies, Medicare, Medicaid. If you are decreasing the amount of respiratory issues because you're dealing with indoor air quality, things like that has real value. And the CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, have a lot of experience finding ways to incentivize and capture behaviors that help with health outcomes. And I think some of that can be carried over and connected to the building space. I saw a comment in the chat about resilience. You think about what happened in Texas recently and what's happened elsewhere. You think about the lifetime of a building. Most buildings are going to, in their lifetime, are going to run into at least one pretty severe event where having the building be higher performing and built better is going to result in much better outcomes there. And yet that kind of value is not captured when you're thinking about, what am I going to get for the cost of this retrofit or for the cost of this higher performance? So I think that, those factors will help to kind of narrow that gap in terms of, getting us to not needing subsidies.
Great, thank you, Lucas. And one more quick question before we wrap up. There's a question asking, how do you include tenants or potential users in your planning for these projects? So Christina or Tim, do you want to comment on that very quickly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question and something that I think there's probably room for improvement. The RAD program actually has some pretty useful guidance and requirements related to tenant involvement and resident feedback. The Eva White project is actually not a Win-owned project. This is a tenant organization nonprofit that will be the majority owner of the project. So Win is supporting them in the acquisition and rehab of that building, and that's something that we've done on a couple of occasions. At Eva White, we've actually been working with the tenant organization. We did one-on-one interviews and surveyed every resident who lives in the building today to understand what their priorities are, what concerns they have, what they want to see out of the rehab. How do they think about energy today? Do they think about energy today? What temperature do they think is comfortable, and what do they think their apartment is today? There's no thermostats, there's no controls. It's just the heat's on September 15th and turns off on June 15th, right? So we've been collecting a lot of information like that and seeking feedback so that we can try to integrate, you know, their priorities and goals into our project planning, and ultimately in the rehab. When you're in someone's apartment for 8 days in a row and changing a community that's looked the same for the last 50 years, it's very important to have the person who lives there and is actually going to be operating your energy pod every day understand what it is that you're doing. So that's kind of a unique aspect of our ABC project, and something that I'm excited to really replicate at our future projects. But I will say, I think it's not done or thought about enough in the cog of 3 to 5 year planning, process for affordable housing projects.
Thanks for those insights, Christina. Tim, do you have anything quick to add?
Yeah, I'll make it quick. The feedback loop for us, because we own so many properties, always starts with the last project that we finished. Because in most cases, at least for new construction, we don't know those people yet, but we're constantly instrumenting our buildings to figure out what's working. Where we fall short is getting enough information back from the tenants. So we're actually working on some pilot projects now to kind of reach out and use our resident services component to get feedback from our residents. How well is this working for them? We feel that if we focus on energy efficiency and drive down the costs of utilities, make it more affordable for them, and everything that we do, that there's not a whole lot of room for opportunity for buy-in from the residents. You're going to heat with gas or heat pump hot water heater. I don't care as long as my bill is low. Where we do get feedback and want feedback is what else can we do? Can we electrify transportation? Should we be doing bike share at our projects? How can we connect to regional transit? What other resources can we connect to? Those are the information loops that we really like to close, and it's all tied together. The front end stuff, it's really trying to go out there and trying to keep the energy out of your building in the first place, lower the costs, and then build from there.
Thanks, Tim. Lucas, do you have any final thoughts on this question?
I'm just going to give a quick one, which is that I think obviously collecting that feedback is really important. I think regardless of how much of that you do, you're always going to learn by doing. And to me, that really emphasizes the importance of demonstration projects and of this idea that is fundamental to industrialized construction, for example, of having a robust and active feedback loop that then ties back to your design, your engineering, your connections with your installers and experienced field staff who are actually going to be doing the work in place. And having that feedback loop just from a conceptual and process design level is fundamental, and again is well informed by having real world demonstrations and having those demonstrations being supported by folks like DOE and others.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for being on this panel. I've learned a lot from listening to your insights and really appreciate your time and generous contributions. So let's go to the final slides to wrap up this session. So for some additional resources, you can go to the Advanced Building Construction Initiative website listed here, as well as the Advanced Building Construction Collaborative website. We will send out websites for WinnCompanies and National Community Renaissance as well. And everybody's email is at the end. So if you want to follow up with any of our panelists, you will have the opportunity to once the slides are distributed. Next slide. Want to highlight that there's going to be a great summer webinar series from Better Buildings and everything from electrification to financing to waste reduction to workplace evolution in the age of COVID or post-COVID, and really encourage everybody to sign up for these. There's going to be a lot of great information presented, and I hope that you can participate. And finally, everyone's contact information is located here. I want to thank everybody for joining the session on advanced building construction, easy as ABC. We hope that you will join the broader advanced building construction community There's lots of opportunities to engage, whether it's from the Department of Energy, from the Advanced Building Construction Collaborative, or supporting real-world projects such as the ones that Christina and Tim presented today. And we really need everybody here to come together to make this transformation happen. As we said, this is so important from a carbon standpoint, from an equity standpoint, from a health standpoint, from a construction productivity, economic competitive standpoint. All of these things really come together for advanced building construction. And I look forward to working with all of you to make it happen. So thank you again for attending the session. Thank you to Christina, Tim, and Lucas for being panelists. And please stay in touch. Our contact information is here. And please enjoy the rest of the Better Building Summit. Thank you, everyone.